And joining me now, Amber Phillips, political reporter for the Washington Post. Amber, you wrote that the real reason Trump is so frustrated with Congress is that he, quote, keeps on taking bullets for Republicans. What brought about that conclusion?
Yeah, sure. Well, Trump is no closer than the day he was campaigning for president to getting some of his major policies into law. That includes immigration, repealing Obamacare, the wall. And that's we always knew Democrats were going to oppose him, right? This is an extraordinary polarizing president. They've been unified every step of the way. But Republicans control Congress and the White House. It's as simple as that. And the reason Trump is, 102, 103 days in with no victories yet, is because Republicans in Congress are very divided on what they want to see done. Do you roll back Obamacare all the way? Do you roll back Obamacare just a little bit? Do you spend money on a border wall or drones? I mean, Republicans in Congress are struggling to figure out how to legislate. And every single time they kind of bring things up to the brink. For example, a government shutdown. They needed to pass a spending bill by Friday or else. And Trump, in order to stop things from a shutdown happening, for example, has to step off his priorities. So I sense, and saw this after the healthcare debate exploded, back in March. Trump is really frustrated with his own party in Congress, who can't quite figure out what they want in terms of legislating.
You talk about how frustrated they are, but if this government shutdown happens the way the president threatened, I mean, is that really, Amber, going to fix anything?
No, absolutely not. A government shutdown would likely be terribly politically for Republicans for the very simple reason, yet again, they control all of Washington. I think the average person who's maybe not going to visit a national park or doesn't have a colleague working in the federal government might not feel the direct impacts of a shutdown, but they'll see it in the headlines, and they know that Republicans control both chambers of Congress and the presidency, and inevitably scratch their heads and say, wait, how did Republicans let that happen?
Yeah, and the fact that they control both chambers, they're gearing up now for a possible health care showdown. But it's not clear whether they have the votes to even get this through. So what are you hearing about health care, and is that going to actually happen this week?
Yeah, what I'm hearing, Rena, is I see absolutely no evidence that this health care bill, 2.0, if you will, is anything but a messaging bill for conservatives, especially in the House, to go home this spring and this summer and say, hey guys, we tried really hard, but we just couldn't get it through Congress. And I say that because I count about 21 House Republicans who say they will not support this new bill. They either think, once again, it's too strict, or it's not strict enough in terms of government's role in people's health care. And then even if you, and I apologize, the line for getting this bill passed is 23. So they're right on the edge if they're supposed to take a vote like they want to tomorrow. Even if they can get it passed through the House, the Senate's a whole different story. Even if they can get it passed through the Senate, it's likely to be a completely different bill than what passed the House. They got to come together. They got to compromise. We are a long way away from any kind of healthcare legislation getting to President Trump's desk.
And the issue of pre-existing conditions, President Trump said it will be covered, but we know the reality is it goes back to the states to decide. So do you think that this whole back and forth could haunt him come midterms?
Yeah, it sounds like he thinks that as well. I mean, the fact that over the weekend and this week he said on the record 2 or 3 times to promise to ensure that sick people can still keep their coverage, he's very worried that millions of people, according to an estimate of the last healthcare bill, we don't have a nonpartisan estimate of this proposal, but we know that it could likely be millions of people lose their healthcare, and Republicans, especially in moderate districts, go home and have to explain that. I think President Trump is recognizing that's going to be a difficult thing to explain. I'll add that there are 23 House Republicans who sit in congressional districts that also voted for Hillary Clinton. Guess how many seats Democrats need to flip to take the House? 24. So things could be, if they got really bad for Republicans, you have a shutdown, millions of people lose health care, it could get bad for House Republicans, and President Trump seems to be recognizing that.
I want to shift gears for a second, Amber, and talk to you. We know that President Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin today. It was their first call since those Syrian airstrikes in April. These two countries obviously at odds over the civil war. Do you think the president can still move forward and work with Putin?
Well, it looks like Vladimir Putin, from his perspective, is willing and open to move forward and talk with President Trump. I mean, the fact that they held this phone call at all underscores that. We know that Putin was in Germany today saying, you know what, I hope that my country and the U.S. can work together to try to end this civil war in Syria. So it remains to be seen going forward how these two men's relationship will work out. But right now it seems like Trump essentially bombing a Syrian airfield a couple weeks ago in this sort of proxy battle with Russia and the U.S. and Syria didn't do too much damage to their relationship. They still have what sounds like a working relationship. They're able to hop on the phone together. I don't see any grudges being held right now.
You know, this new line of focus, it seems, from the White House, the president's willing to praise and to meet with authoritarian leaders. It's raising concern on both sides of the aisle, just simply willing to negotiate with anyone. But is there emerging strategy from the White House about this, from the Philippines president to Duterte to the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un?
I don't know yet, and that's because President Trump's comments that he'd be willing under the right circumstances to meet with the North Korean dictator or meet with a president in the Philippines who is, talked about assassinating journalists and started a bloody war on drugs, caught much of his staff off guard. What I understand is President Trump was on the phone with Philippine President Duterte and kind of informally said, hey, why don't you come on over to the White House? And his staff was like, wait, really? Oh, okay. And so what I sense is a president doing what he does best, what he thinks is right, is just making decisions from his gut in the moment, and his staff kind of catching up. I don't see any larger strategy here yet.
Never know. Amber Phillips joining us from the Washington Post. Amber, we love chatting with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.